Yes,
We're live.
we're live. I'm not even going to try to do an intro. I'm terrible at the intro, so it's horrible. We just skip it from now on. I tried doing it for the first like 5 episodes, and it was we're back again. Thank you for joining us, and it was terrible. So,
Well, Rajiv, we're excited to have you here.
yes,
You guys, Auradine, talk of the town. Lot of chatter. You guys are entering a space that has been dominated by a few of the incumbent players. You know, a bunch of these Chinese manufacturers. Our buddy Marshall Long has been running some of y'all's new ASICs. Is ranting and raving about them. He's a convert. He's out here spreading the gospel of Auradine. I've had a chance to talk to your team a little bit as well. So we want to have you on to figure out what's your story. Where you guys going? Is this the truth? You guys made a huge splash at the TBC Summit a little while back. So yeah, just excited to talk to you, man.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on the show. And the short answer is yes, it's the truth. And you know, we are on a great trajectory here. We started a little over a couple of years ago, and we said, you know, a lot of people have tried in this space and failed. This space has gone through a lot of transition in the last few years. Went from mining on your laptop to PCs to GPUs to specialized ASICs. And then the whole market became really supplied. The supply of the whole market just is Chinese vendors, which doesn't make sense for a decentralized protocol. Very risky thing for it to be. And so we also saw that a number of folks before us that tried didn't really make it. Okay, and so we said we ought to do things differently. We ought to do things better. We ought to drive innovation into this market. And we put together a team that's not necessarily been in Bitcoin for like 10 years, like many folks in the Bitcoin space, but we've been in the infrastructure space, silicon systems, software. We build stuff that drives the internet today. And we said this blockchain area and Bitcoin is super exciting. So we think we can do some innovation and bring back that supply to the United States, which I think it should be.
Why take on something? You said it yourself that, you know, numbers of companies have tried before, they've failed miserably. Why take on like this colossal task that is not just like so capital intensive, extremely difficult to enter this space? Why take on this challenge?
You know, I think if you look at our track records, we've taken on big challenges, you know, so my background is I took on some big companies and we got into large cloud companies in networking. People had asked the same question. But I think the main reason is twofold. We were looking at a big problem to solve that was a hard problem where we could make a big impact. That was the simple start of this journey. And we said blockchain is an exciting area. Within blockchain, Bitcoin is a very, very critical piece of the blockchain ecosystem. And we saw 2-3 things that we felt were big problems. One is, as we spoke early, the centralization of supply in Chinese suppliers, which I think is a big issue for the blockchain ecosystem. In fact, not a lot of people talk about it.
Agreed.
They want to put it under the rug, so to speak, in many cases. So that I think is an issue that needs to be addressed. The second thing that a lot of people talk about, frankly, is the fact that Bitcoin uses energy. It takes energy, converts it into Bitcoins and secures the decentralized protocol. And the thing is that, people talk about Bitcoin using energy as a good thing or a bad thing, right? And frankly, it could be either. Some people can use it in a bad way. Some people can use it in a good way. And we said, how can we make it possible and provide the tools to this industry to make it good, make it constructive and positive? And for that, you need grounds up innovation. And that's what we set out to do. And I think we have achieved it. And we are still early in the journey. I think there's a lot of innovation in front of us as well.
have you guys seen a lot of pickup? I mean, when you put out the first machines from Auradine, what were, I guess, some of the biggest challenges or obstacles to get into that market? Because, like Jake was pointing out, it has been dominated really by Bitmain and What's miners, or MicroBT. I know Cannon's kind of trying to get in there too, but really those two players were the main ones forever. So what was the biggest obstacle trying to get your name out there and trying to show that we are a little different than the players that we saw kind of come into space, the Block or who. There was other.
There's a few other ones. Yeah.
But HP, I think, was doing it for a little bit, and they just kind of folded up shop. Intel, that's right. And so that was very short-lived, though. And so for a group like Intel to not be able to make it, like, what was your biggest obstacle in kind of breaking into this market?
Yeah, so, obviously we looked at all these failures, and there's lessons from each of these. So you don't want to repeat the same mistakes. As you can imagine. And so we said that there were a few things that are critical for a new company to be successful in this space. Okay, first is obviously you need to have a team that can execute on this. That's the single most important thing. Then you need to have the capital, and you need to have investors who can back you, who can guide you through the process, and as well as early customers who are willing to share with you the requirements and the needs in this space. And you say, hey, if I bring this capability out, is this useful or interesting? So capital is a very important part. And a lot of companies in this space start with, like 10 million, 20 million of capital. We all know Bitcoin goes through ups and downs, and the sentiment goes up and down, right? So when you're at the peak, the sentiment is amazing. When you're at the bottom, people think this is the end of the world. But the reality is not true in either of those instances. And so you want to get enough capital to be able to withstand the full cycle and not get stuck in the middle where you need capital and the sentiment is very low. So we raised our Series A, which was approximately $80 million. Very big amount for a Series A funding, but it was essential for us to go all the way. Okay, so that was an important aspect. So capital was the second part of it. The third part of it was many of the companies before us thought that silicon is the only thing to do, right? And so even Intel, for example, they just said, if I do good silicon, that's the end of it, okay? But that's not. That's the beginning of it. What you do need is you need the full system capability. You need the software and the firmware that runs on it. You need a reliable system that can withstand extreme temperatures, failures of these chips in certain conditions. Can you build a robust system for that? Okay, so, and then on top of that, software, a lot of the Bitcoin hardware before us has been not built for data center scale mining. It was really hobbyist hardware that was put together and maybe layers of software put on top of it. But we said, can we build a ground up design for data center scale mining coupled with the requirements of the energy grid? So that was another piece of the equation that we did. And then again, you put some brilliant folks, do some innovation. By the way, not to mention supply chain. Right. So you can do all of these things. And if you don't have great relationships with the supply chain vendors and the ability to build at large scale with good yield, you're again going to not succeed. So we thought of all of these things upfront before we got started.
So what models do you guys have out right now? And what would you compare them to from the Bitmain or MicroBT side?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I can tell you what we compare to, but we have certain capabilities that are incomparable. So I'll talk about both.
Yeah.
We have a model. Well, first of all, we sell Bitcoin mining platforms that span air-cooled, single-phase immersion, as well as dual-phase immersion models. Okay, so that's one. And then secondarily, we have within the air-cooled, we have our initial model that is, does about 185 a terahash. We have a second model that does 260, which is the fastest in an air-cooled box from anyone
260.
Else. So
how many
260 in an air-cooled.
How many joules is that?
So we can actually, on the 260, we are in, approximately 16 joules a terahash at its optimal value.
That's great.
And potentially less than that. Okay. So again, this is not the end. Like I said, it's not the end of the road. We'll keep coming up with new products. But so that's air cooled. And then in single phase immersion, we have a model that does 250 and another one that does close to 375 terahash in a single phase immersion, same form factor. And then our density gets even more in two-phase immersion. We can go, close to 600 terahash in a single box. So it's a broad range of solutions.
Can you overclock those too with kind of your own hardware
Yeah, I mean,
or firmware?
yeah. So this is where we are different, right? So
Yeah.
what we do is the notion of overclocking and underclocking, I think, is an old notion. What we provide is a capability that we call energy tune, where essentially you can run the miner at whatever terahash or power rate that you want to. So as an example, in our 185 terahash, we can run it anywhere from 20, 30 terahash at the low end, all the way to 185. And it's it's like if you bought a car and somebody told you, hey, you can only run it at 30 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and you can overclock it to 90 miles an hour, right? That's not how we do it. We can run it at any speed that we want to. So our miners, you can run them at whatever speed you want to and whatever power consumption you want to. So if at a data center scale level, you can bring the power up and down within seconds based on the demand response or the price response requirements of the grid.
On the air-cooled, and that all sounds wonderful, by the way, but on the air-cooled, what do you guys have some, I guess, and I'm sure you did, so I know this might be a stupid question, but how much upfront legwork did you do from like a regional standpoint on testing? Like, did you guys go set up some operations in West Texas where it's, pretty dry but high heat and all that, and then maybe go try some out over in the Houston area? Because like I'm actually talking to some clients about some sites in Houston, but the big thing is running air-cooled containers in Houston with the humidity risk. Like, how are your machines holding up, and did you test those out up front in kind of the variety of regions around the country?
It's a good point, because that's one of the number one things that I hear. It's like, in West Texas we run the micro BTs instead of the bit mains because they handle up with
the heat better.
Yeah, the heat and sand and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So right up front, we designed the machines to have the broadest operating temperature range, bigger than wider than anyone else. So on our air-cooled machines, we go from -20 to 50, and frankly, we can keep running even beyond 50 C ambient.
Yeah.
And
I'm
the way
sorry,
we tested it was.
I got to jump in there. I'm like a Missouri boy. I don't even know what 50 Celsius is. What is that in Fahrenheit? Is that like equivalent to what?
It's it's 32 plus 1.8 times 50, so it's like 112.
Oh, okay.
In that range.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about 110 plus Fahrenheit, and it can go higher. So essentially, the way we did it is after we designed the system, before even we shipped it to our customers, we said, let's take it to a chamber. And we put these machines in a chamber where you can control the temperature and the humidity and things like that. And we ran it across the full range, ramping up temperatures up and down, because that's what happens in the real world. And we actually initially we got our customers, we said, why don't you come and take a look at it? And so people said, I don't believe this is going to work. And we would crank up that temperature all the way to 50 C or 110 plus Fahrenheit, and these systems would keep running. And so people were blown away by that. And then beyond that, what we've done is so far we've shipped boxes to over 30 customers all across the US and Canada, and then even some places outside North America. And people have been running these in all kinds of temperatures and all kinds of climates, and they've subjected our machines to some, artificial things where they take our machines and put it in front of the other miners that are generating heat to heat it up and things like that, and extremely robust operation. So people are delighted at what they see. They haven't seen anything like this from anyone else up to now.
Yeah. So how long have you got from sales to where we're at today? How long has it been from your first customer sales to up to now?
We started shipping in the second half of last year.
Okay.
So it's been, north of 6 months.
Oh, okay.
And so these machines have been running for this period. So there has been we just shipped them a couple of weeks and it's running fine, but it's been, 6+ months. And we are, we just completed our Series B financing that we have added an additional 75 plus million of financing to the company. We have now over $80 million in bookings that we are shipping against. So we are shipping at decent volumes.
Yeah.
And we expect to ramp this up to a much, much bigger scale around end of this year. So we should be able to ship, tens of exahashes, almost every month.
That was going to be my next question is what kind of capacity for manufacturing do you guys have, and how far lead time are you needing on orders right now? If I place an order today for, I don't know, if I'm just grabbing a number, 5 megawatts worth of, your immersion machines or air-cooled, when could I expect to get them?
Yeah,
Asking for a friend.
It takes. Yeah, so this thing takes approximately 4 to 5 months.
Okay.
Especially if we build to order, that's the duration it takes. Obviously, if we have products in inventory, we can do it a little bit quicker than that.
Do you have some inventory
so as we
right
scale, we have not a huge inventory right now.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, we have
it's a good problem to have.
decent
Right.
bookings.
That's a good thing. Yeah, definitely a good thing. Well, why don't you hang on to those? We should talk after the show. But it was. I'd like to.
So where are you guys manufacturing at?
So one thing we are doing is we are not manufacturing in China, right? And so we are a U.S. company, U.S. incorporated company. Our design is all here in the United States. In terms of silicon manufacturing, that's in Asia, right? So Taiwan is where a lot of these chips are manufactured. And then what we are doing is we have a couple of options. We have manufacturing in Asia, and then we have manufacturing in the US. US manufacturing has a slight premium associated with it. But essentially what we're doing is we are manufacturing at across our entire supply chain. We're trying to build a resilient supply chain with multi-sourcing. So the idea is to make sure that we have capacity when available, when required. We also have resiliency in the supply chain because who knows what happens in this new world order of geopolitics. We want to be able to be there for our customers when the demand arises.
So I remember when I was first exposed to this space, this was like, you were still at Jay.
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting down with somebody, I won't say who it was, and he was just like, yeah, I just wired $500,000 to this person that I've only known through Telegram, to a Chinese Bitcoin ASIC broker. And I heard all of these nightmare stories. How much of like the fact that you can just like interface with an American company, and I would hope like really good customer support and service, and not feel like you have to like jump through all these like loopholes. And I know it's evolved, and that was like years ago, but like how much of that is like a selling point for potential customers?
Yeah, I mean, we just had a big customer in our office yesterday, and they love it. I mean, they love the support that they've received so far. So they've placed a big order, and so it's included in those booking numbers I mentioned. And so they're just delighted at the support. Now, they're buying from a U.S. company. They are not sending money to some random person or some entity like a broker or so forth. So they like that as well. But what they also like is they can pick up the phone and call us and said, hey, can you do the following capability in these miners for us? And we say, yeah, that sounds great. We'll put it in our next release of firmware. So that capability has not existed for many of these customers in the past, where they could have that kind of a relationship. The other thing that we are doing is we as a company are selling in the B2B model primarily. So we are selling to other businesses as opposed to selling on Amazon or stuff like that. So we have relatively a tight number of customers, so we can actually provide that white glove treatment that would not be possible if we were selling to hundreds and thousands of customers.
Yeah, I was going to say, like Jake was pointing out, the mere fact that they can probably go to a website, and I haven't even been on your guys' website, so I'm just making assumptions, but based on what you're saying, probably true. They can get on a website, find a phone number, shoot an actual email, and not Telegram
or WhatsApp
or one of the other ways that we typically have to communicate in this space, that alone is going to make an institutional group that is maybe looked at getting into mining or
the space is already risky enough as it is.
Right.
How can you lower your risk and your comfortability, especially when
Right.
you're trying to like go to investors and ask for tons of money to build all these new sites?
And your miners are your
Yeah.
most expensive thing. And so it's like, man, wait. So I've got to go buy the most expensive part of my operation over Telegram. Most of the people that are like at the institutional level that I talk to, they don't even know what Telegram is.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is a good thing. This is something that I felt like has been needed for a long time, just to really make it. I don't know. Obviously, I love Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. I've been in it for several years, but like this is something that's needed to kind of push it to the next level from an institutional standpoint. Is having groups come in on the ASIC manufacturing side that are actually like, I don't know, pass the smell test and not feel like you're like wiring your money to somebody you're never going to see anything from. So. Yeah, I think this is great.
We talked about like y'all are just, you've got tons of orders, tons of bookings. We talked about you guys are 2 financings deep. I hope this is public knowledge. If it's not, we'll cut this part out of the episode. From what I've heard, some of y'all's biggest customers are also some of your investors. And I think that that's a wildly important selling point. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So, one of our investors is Marathon Digital, who is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, public mining company out there. And so that relationship has been wonderful. I mean, they're strong supporters. We've got as we were starting out, as I mentioned, we had people in our team that understood the Bitcoin infrastructure and people that understood silicon and systems infrastructure. So it was very important for us to understand the infrastructure, the requirements, the directions, the trends. And so that relationship was a great relationship. They need diversification of supply as well. They believe in this decentralization of supply. So it's been an outstanding relationship, and we really appreciate everything there. They're also into 2-phase immersion. They just did an announcement recently on that.
Yep.
So that's, I would say that's kind of the leading edge of where Bitcoin mining is. And we expect that to happen more as time goes on. And so it's been wonderful to have that. And
Yeah. So how hard is it to get into the chip game? Because I've always heard it's really tough, and that there's a shortage, and trying to get in line to get those can be a battle. But
from my understanding, we haven't talked about your background too much, but my understanding is that you and the team that you've put together, like that's what you guys have done historically, and so you just took your expertise, built this rock star management team, and then just applied that towards kind of this problem. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, so I've been in the semiconductor industry for more than 20 years. So you can imagine I have some good relationships with the supply chain folks in semiconductors. And so some of my previous companies have either gone public or been acquired for billion plus valuation.
Yeah, we heard about that. We're gonna ask you about that too. That's I want to know how to do that. Is it like a class you can take? Go ahead though. I'm sorry.
And then some of my co-founders over here and a lot of the folks in the team actually used to be at Palo Alto Networks, which is the leading cybersecurity company, and sells billions of dollars of revenues, including a variety of systems, firewall systems. And so folks over here have been involved in selling systems to enterprise users. As you can imagine, enterprise users have a higher bar than some of the Bitcoin data center operators. And so we are bringing that enterprise class talent into the Bitcoin space.
What is so did this problem bring you to Bitcoin, or did Bitcoin bring you to this problem?
So if you look at our backgrounds, we are all about infrastructure, right? And we believe infrastructure should be high performance, it should be sustainable, it should be secure. Okay, so and we know how to make things run at data center scale. So some of the stuff that we've done in the past, powers the internet, mobile infrastructure, e-commerce on the internet, security in enterprises, and over the internet. And we've driven that across successive generations to very high performance. So when we were looking at the next thing, we said blockchain is here to stay. It offers some incredibly attractive capabilities in decentralization, digitization of assets, and so forth. And so when we said, okay, let's look at blockchain, we said, wow, Bitcoin is the biggest piece of this where we can make the biggest impact. Now, as we look forward, there's more things than Bitcoin that we are working on. And then AI really exploded onto the scene beginning of last year with generative AI. So we're looking at the future. We think between blockchain and AI, there will be multiple trillions of impact to the global economy. We think that there's a huge need for the things that we worked on: performance, sustainability, and security. And so we said that's an area, and that's how we got started. And of course, once you jump into an area, you have to do the best possible thing to win and to build some great technology.
So do you guys think you get into the GPU game as well and try to take on Nvidia? Obviously, Nvidia's been carrying the entire market for like the last 12 months, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pre-announce stuff. We obviously, I think it's
come on, do it.
It's tough to take on Nvidia. It's tough to take on Nvidia head on. They have not just great chips, but they have lots of software, CUDA, lots of models that run on it. So, but I do think that AI today, as exciting and huge as it has become, needs like a 10x improvement in security, in power consumption, and so on and so forth. And we'll pick an area. We have picked an area that we are going to provide that 10x, 20x advantage over where the world is. But that's coming. So stay tuned on that.
Well, shifting back to Bitcoin on what's coming, what would be, and I'm sure you guys already have them in the works, but what's the next iteration going to be? What kind of improvements would you look to try to make now? Just lower joules, higher hash rate? There's got to be stuff in there even that you can build and expand upon.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin, as you know, we are going to go through halving this month.
Right.
So it's going, the number of Bitcoins you mine keeps reducing over time. We expect transaction fees will keep becoming a bigger portion of Bitcoin mining. And the transaction fees is not as predictable as the number of Bitcoins you mine. Okay. And so that will keep going up and down. In addition, as we all know, the global exahash rate keeps increasing. And people have generally under forecasted the global exahash rates in the past. And I think that when Bitcoin energy becomes, crosses a certain threshold, things like demand response, responsible use of energy, pricing response in certain cases in unregulated geographies, making sure that we take advantage of natural gas flaring, methane flaring, and instead put it in Bitcoin. Those things become much, much more important. And so we already have, as I mentioned, Energy Tune. We have a capability called Auto Tune that adjusts the miners dynamically based on the changes that happen around the ecosystem, whether it's energy cost, whether it's transaction fees and things like that. So we already have those capabilities, and we continue to enhance those capabilities at a data center level. The other thing that's happening, as you know, is Aircooled still dominates the deployments, but there will be interesting immersion technologies that come down the road. So that is an important aspect of it. So I see there's a lot of opportunity for innovation going forward.
Do you guys have a hydro miner?
We do not have a hydro. And so again, we look at that technology and we'll see if it makes sense. We'll consider it.
Have you?
But one of the things, by the way, that we want to highlight, right, is the fact that, as you know, about 40% of mining happens in North America, right? Global mining. And these mining systems are plugged into or connected very tightly with our energy grid. As you can imagine, if you look at our US telecommunication infrastructure, the United States very scared of getting foreign equipment, especially Huawei equipment, plug into the telecom infrastructure for national security reasons and so forth. Yet we plug a lot of Chinese equipment into our energy infrastructure, right? And so there's also that awareness that needs to happen to make sure that the software that is connected to the energy grid is secure and something that the United States can trust for our energy infrastructure.
Yeah, no, that
Can't be
is
running miners on TikTok. You know?
right. That is a big deal. And yeah, there probably has not even been enough discussion around that on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that's a real thing that it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the start, just having a kind of U.S. player in that space is going to be giving a lot of people a lot more security than what they had when they're going to basically buy these from China. Do you guys, if I wanted to buy some machines right now, like what's it running for the Aircooled? What's one machine cost? Or on a per terahash basis, what's the price?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on volume, right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, we are dealing with a small set of large customers, not selling one machine at a time. But in terms of the pricing, we are super competitive, right? So, right now, if you're placing orders, generally pricing on these miners is somewhere in the high teens in terms of dollars per terahash. So we are very competitive from that point of view, and we provide a lot of additional capabilities, as I mentioned, that are unique to us.
Yeah. And from a customer service standpoint, again, probably a lot easier to get a hold of somebody here than a Bitmain or MicroBT. I'm not trying to hate on you guys. I like them. They're the only options we have for a while. But yeah, it is. I'm glad to see. And I have actually seen your miners running with Marshall.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's had nothing
cool
but
to see
good things to say about him.
Made in USA sticker.
Right. Yeah, it's nice to see that. But yeah, and you didn't really say this, so I want to go back to it. But Jake asked about your background. When I saw we were getting you on, again, I wanted to do it in person because there's not very often you can get somebody your kind of pedigree, on the show all the time. Sometimes we get tinfoil hat time and people want to avoid us. But yeah, so can you kind of go through your background and talk about some of those companies you took public? Number one, is it Marvel? That was one of those that you took public,
Yeah, so
right?
this is my fourth startup that I'm doing. The one immediately prior to this was a company called Innovium. Innovium built very high performance, leading edge networking switch silicon for cloud data centers. And so as the world was moving from enterprise to cloud, we said, let's build a ground up solution. And we were able to win some of the biggest cloud hyperscale customers in the world, among the top 2-3 that you probably are familiar with. And we took that company to north of 100 million run rate. And that company was acquired by Marvell for roughly $1.3 billion in 2021. Prior to that, I was chief operating officer in a company called Cavium. I was there for 10 years. And that company built some really innovative technology for security and multi-core processors that really made e-commerce happen. So, we go to Amazon and we put our credit card and not worry about it. And to do that at scale across tens and hundreds of millions of customers at the same time, it requires very high performance security. And so we made that happen. We made mobile infrastructure happen. So, 3G, 4G data, 5G data runs on chips that we built. So that company went public and then was eventually bought for $6 billion. And then prior to that, it was actually before the dot-com bust. I did a startup that was a company called NetBoost that did build one of the first network processing silicon, and it was acquired by Intel. And I stayed on at Intel managing that group for several years. So this is my fourth startup, as I said. I worked in some big companies like NetApp and Sun Microsystems. I've been in Silicon Valley for 30 plus years, went to Stanford Business School for my MBA. So, that's
Smart.
my career.
We're doing an energy tech night. We're doing one of our events in Palo Alto later this year. So
Oh, no.
we'll have to chat about that and get our goal is to come in there and school a bunch of people in Silicon Valley about energy.
Yeah, that would be great.
That is actually really great because there is a divide in there sometimes. I think that, you guys would be perfect bridging that little gap.
We got to go with some VCs who are very energy friendly, and so
Nice.
we're gonna take the world by storm. So, Rajiv, I know you got a hard stop here in a second. Want to thank you for coming on. We got to do this again. We got to do it in person.
Yeah, in person.
Super excited about what you guys are working on. It's been great to catch up and learn more about your background and where you guys are going. And I know everybody's excited about it. So I think that you guys having success is just going to benefit everybody, like you talked about, and being able to not be so reliant on China for our ASICs in the mining space. And so super excited, man. Can't wait to see what you guys build.
And I apologize for being late.
Yeah.
I screwed that one up again. I'm like a boomer stuck in a almost boomer body. So, but yeah, I really
problem at all.
we wanted to get you in person, but we're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to both of you, and looking forward to that event in Palo Alto that you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll definitely send you the details. We'll make something happen.